Hello everyone and welcome back to Paperback Journeys, where today I'm going to be talking about the 5 books that I read in April. I think it's 5 books, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep. I'm going to tell you which one of these books was my most favourite that I read this month, which was my least favourite, and then we'll take a look at the top 10 list to see if any of this month's readings made the list. I'm also going to tell you about a spooky trip that I took to Colorado this month, and if you're a fan of Stephen King, I think you're going to appreciate this. It's actually been on my bucket list for quite a while, and I'm really glad that I got the opportunity to go and visit this landmark in America because, yeah, for Stephen King fans, it's a bit of a dream. Okay, so let's talk about the first book that I read in April, and that is Golden Sun, which is the second book in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. This story continues the saga of Darrow, who is a rebel that's infiltrated the ruling classes of a futuristic space colony, and he's really seeking to bring down a society that is built on caste discrimination. A lot of people told me in the comments section last month when I first read Red Rising, that Red Rising was good, but it was kind of more of a primer for the rest of the story, just an introduction to the world and to the characters, and things get a lot more interesting in the second book, and I've got to say, I agree with you. Golden Sun just had a way of heightening the stakes. It expanded the universe. It had some really great dramatic moments. I'm obviously not going to give any spoilers, but I'll just say that Pierce Brown has a really good way, I think, of just wrapping up each book in a series. He nails down an ending. He kind of closes off the story quite neatly, but then he hits you with a cliffhanger that makes you really anticipate what's going to be happening in the next book, and I think that's really important. So yeah, really good start to the month. The next book that I read in April was 20th Century Ghosts by Joe Hill. Again, this was a really good one. It's a collection of short stories by Joe Hill. If you don't know, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. Sometimes I feel bad when I say that, as if like I have to qualify him, you know, but he is a good writer in his own right. In fact, some people prefer Joe Hill's books to Stephen King's. And this is, I think, one of the better Joe Hill books that I've read. It's a collection of short stories. They range from psychological thrillers to straight up horrors to supernatural vignettes. I think that's what I enjoyed most about this book, is that there's a wide variety of stories to enjoy in this. Joe Hill is primarily a horror writer, I think, and so there's definitely a few of these stories that are eerie and unsettling. Probably one of my favorite stories is the first story, and that was definitely, I would say, a horror, maybe thriller. It's called Best New Horror. That's the name of the first short story, and I found that one to be the most chilling, I would say. I was just flipping through the pages on the edge of my seat the whole way through. Then there's another story that immediately follows that one, and it's set in a haunted cinema or movie theater if you're American, and I found that one to be really sweet and wholesome. And then there's another story about a boy who wakes up to find that he's this giant-sized insect, which really reminded me of Franz Kafka's Metamorphoses. And actually, that brings me to the next book that I read in April, which is by Franz Kafka, The Trial. By the way, just before I start talking about this one, I just want to say, if you are a fan of psychological thrillers and horrors and you like short stories, this will be highly recommended. I definitely thought this was a great read. All right, now let's talk about Kafka. Didn't enjoy it much, lads. Didn't enjoy it much. This story is about a character called Joseph K, who wakes up in his apartment one day to find that there are policemen in the hall and he is under arrest for an unspecified crime. This crime seems to be a mystery both to him and also to the police officers that are arresting him. No one knows why he's under arrest. And we basically follow Joseph K as he navigates the confusing and absurd bureaucratic system. This is kind of an exploration into bureaucracy and the unknowable nature of an unchecked government. It does make you feel uneasy, and get it out. I spent most of my time reading this uh, as confused as Joseph K. And I think that that's the idea, is for the reader to just feel as though they're walking through a bad dream. Every avenue that they try to pursue gets stranger and stranger. And I get it. I understand. At least I think I get it. But understanding it and appreciating the message and the storytelling device isn't the same as enjoying it. And I just didn't have any fun reading this. I'm not opposed to absurdity. I really enjoyed Metamorphoses. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite books, but it's up there, you know? I really enjoyed it. And so I had high hopes for the trial, but I just found it to be really frustrating. And again, I'm not one of these people that is really interested in other people's strange dreams. You know, you ever go into the office and then someone goes, "Oh, I had a really weird dream last night. Yeah, I met my cousin, but then it had a different face, and and you're just kind of going, right, yeah." Yeah, and it's not really interesting. It's just nonsense. That's what this felt like. I really liked the opening chapters, and I thought it had a lot of promise. Actually, Franz Kafka passed away before he was able to finish this book. I think I'm right about that. And so maybe that explains why it felt a little bit unpolished, incomplete. And there were just pages and pages of this book where I didn't know exactly what was happening or why. And I don't have the patience for that, really. I felt, again, frustrated and a little bit fatigued. It's one of those books where it's sitting on the side. I know I've got to read it because I said I was going to read it. I told you on the channel, spun the wheel. This is the book that came up. I never wanted to pick it up. And that's not a good sign, is it? The next book that I read in April is This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. It's the first book I've ever read by this author. And it's about a couple who move into an apartment and they purchase a smart home device called Itza. And soon after, this device starts acting strangely, starts singing in the middle of the night, kind of creepy, starts ordering things for them that they never ordered. And so they're getting these packages. And there's a couple of funny scenes where they're trying to fathom where these unusual items have come from. A little while later, a tragic event happens. And that's when things start to spiral completely out of control. This is a horror book. And there's some genuinely scary moments in here. Honestly, for the first time in a while, I felt scared a little bit. Especially with one scene. It wasn't anything horrific or graphic, but it was just kind of like, ooh, like a little shiver down your spine kind of moment. But mostly this book is about grief, and I actually think that grief is handled so well in this book. I actually wondered, did the author lose someone recently and still had fresh feelings about it? Because it felt so authentic, and the feelings that will be familiar to anyone who's lost someone close to them. I think that they'll ring true without being melodramatic. Sometimes, you know, in books where someone loses someone, things can become a little bit melodramatic. Not here. It just felt real. It was about the halfway point. I was thinking to myself, this is a 5-star book. It might even be the best book that I've read this year. It might actually top the top 10 list that I'll be talking about in a little while. And then it shifted from a drama slash horror into cosmic horror. And I'm starting to get the feeling that I just don't like cosmic horror. Here's what I like about cosmic horror. I like the fear of the unknown. I like the feeling of dread when you're facing something that you just know that it's inevitable. You can't overcome it. I like that feeling of kind of like sinking dread. And also I like the mysterious nature of and origins of a kind of like an ancient evil. I like that. I like that stuff. And that always seems to be present in cosmic horror. I think these are vital ingredients. But I think the genre kind of hinges on things that are beyond human comprehension. And so whenever the climax comes, it's everything starts to become incomprehensible, right? It has to, for it to fit the genre. And then I start to lose interest a little bit, because by definition, there's no way that I can know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? And some people, I think for some people, that's not a big problem. They don't need to know what's going on when they're reading a book. I do. And it's one of the reasons that I didn't like The Trial by Franz Kafka. And it's one of the reasons that I fell out of love with this book. This book was no longer a 5-star by the time that I finished it. It's probably more around like a 3.5 or something like that, which is unfortunate. But I'd say this, if you like cosmic horror, this is a banger. Like, you'll love this. Anyway, after talking about how much I'm not sure about cosmic horror anymore, let's talk about the next book that I read, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is another cosmic horror, right? But kind of like this one. This book is unlike any other book I've ever read. It's experimental fiction. It is cosmic horror, and I know what you're thinking. For a bloke who don't like cosmic horror, you definitely read a lot of it. Yeah, I know, I'm a glutton for punishment. But anyway, this book is nuts. I knew going into this book that it was going to be really challenging. So I actually took off 3 days off of work. That's how much of a nerd I am. I take days off of work to sit down and read books, because I knew that this isn't really a book that I can pick up and just look at for 10 minutes or something like that. It's something where I've really got to dig deep. And so I committed to reading it in 3 days. That was a heavy 3 days, man. It's difficult to talk about this book without giving any spoilers, so I'm just going to say generally what it's about. It's about a family that move into a house that appears to be larger on the inside than it is on the outside. Impossible, right? And so the guy decides that he's going to measure the insides, measure the outsides, and compare the two, and he finds out that no, his suspicions were correct. Even when he's using tape measures or lasers or whatever tools he's using, keeps coming up with the same result. It is larger on the inside. The space within the house doesn't act as space is supposed to act. It's not following the rules of physics. This book is famous for its unconventional structure. And in that way, the formatting in this book is kind of mimicking the house itself. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the structure of the book is weird. The structure of the house is weird. And I mean, I'll show you, for example, some of these pages. Look, you just see there's a couple of bits of writing at the bottom. Then look, some of it is just musical notes. And so some of it is, let me find other examples. Some parts you've got like these blue boxes and it's all written backwards. For these parts, I was actually, or for certain parts of the book, I was taking pictures of the book and then flipping it around. So as you see, it's formatted really strange, and it's actually known as, the formatting is known as ergodic literature. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's quite frankly a new word for me. And the best way that I can explain what that is labor-intensive literature. Like books that you can't just sit back and read. You actually have to put some physical effort into tracking what is going on. I suppose another example of that would be like choose your own adventure novels, kind of similar to that in a way. Like I say, I took 3 days off of work, and every morning I was waking up first thing in the morning, and I would just flip it open to the page. I'd start reading it, then it would reference the appendices at the back, and then I'd flip to the back, see what was going on, get all creeped out, go back to the page that I was on. As I was flipping back and forth through the pages, I started to feel a little bit crazy. And I think that that's the idea, really, is to make you feel as though you're going nuts along with all the characters in the book. You're getting disoriented with the characters in the book. And so, yeah, I kind of liked it. I am glad that I read it. I'm glad that I took the time off work. I don't feel as though they were wasted days. I felt like that was a good investment. Would I recommend it? No. I couldn't recommend this to anyone. No way, because it's so weird. You have no... If I recommend you a book, I want you to go and enjoy it, right? And same if I recommend something to one of my friends, I want them to just go and have a good time. This is so weird, man. You've got to be really into experimental fiction, I think. This, yeah, I can't recommend it. But if you want a unique experience, then go ahead, you know? And so, of everything that I read this month, which was my least favorite book, unfortunately, can you guess? It's The Trial by Franz Kafka. I like the premise of this book. I think it's interesting, an exploration into unchecked power, the idea of tyranny without a tyrant. I think that's fascinating, but I just didn't enjoy myself when I was reading it. And it for a lot of the time that I was reading it, it felt as though I was just perusing someone's dream journal and just kind of being like, okay, yeah, dreams are weird, you know? So, what is the book that I enjoyed the most that I read in April? You know, there's a few good contenders, I would say. I enjoyed the first half of This Thing Between Us, but then it got a little bit messy at the end. 20th Century Ghosts had some really excellent short stories that will stick with me for a while. House of Leaves is like no book I've ever read before, but I think just for pure enjoyment, and that's why I read, just pure enjoyment, is the best book I read is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. A big improvement on Red Rising, which I also didn't mind. I thought it was kind of good. The big question is, does this book or any of the other books that I read this month make it to the top 10 list for 2024 so far? You know, we're coming up to the halfway point of 2024, so the board is starting to get a little harder to penetrate. This, by the way, is a list that I update once a month. So let's take a look at the current leaderboard and see if any of these books have made it. Okay, so let's run through where we currently are before we update it. In 10th place is Tender is the Flesh. Then 9th is Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. In 8th place is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Then Red Rising by Pierce Brown. See, you know, I did like it. 6th is Shogun by James Clavell. Then in 5th place is Foe by Ian Reid. In 4th place and 3rd place, we've got Stephen King, both of them. 4th place is Misery and 3rd place is Pet Sematary. Then in 2nd place, we've got Death of a Salesman. And then the best book that I've read so far this year is The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu. I can tell you that this month, I'm going to add 3 titles from April to the top 10 list. And so, unfortunately, that does mean that we are going to lose Tender is the Flesh, Heart-Shaped Box, and Legends and Lattes. And so this is a look at the top 10 books of 2024 that's been updated for the month of April. And like I say, you know, this is an ongoing list. It's going to be continuously updated throughout the year. So you're always going to know what were my favorite books of the year. I think this is fun, you know, it's just a good way of keeping track of everything. So what are the other channel updates? I do have one update actually, and that is, and I know it's taken a long time, but I've set up a Goodreads account. Actually, I'm using an old Goodreads account that I'm going to start actually using. And I know it's crazy that I haven't used it as a booktuber. I haven't been using Goodreads. But yeah, I've set up a Goodreads account. If you'd like to add me, you're going to be able to see early reviews. And so, yeah, if you want to go on there, I've put it in the description box below. There's a link down there. If you add me as a friend on Goodreads, then I'll make sure to add you right back. And I'm going to do my very best to keep up to date on Goodreads. So like I say, you'll always know what I'm reading, and then you'll be able to track progress and see my reviews when they come out. They're not going to be in depth like they are on the YouTube channel, but I'll put a little review in there, you know, with a link to the full review. And the same goes for TikTok as well. I've started to make TikTok videos. Bad timing bad timing, honestly. I live in America and they're talking about banning TikTok at the moment. So, yeah, great start. Just a great time to start TikTok. But anyway, I put up a video there a little while ago about the never ending story. Seemed to be quite popular. Got like 80,000 views or something crazy. And so, yeah, if you want to see that, then you can follow me on TikTok. All of the links to all my social media stuff is down below. In terms of new subscribers to this YouTube channel, which is obviously the priority, is the YouTube channel, we got 363 new subscribers. So welcome to all the new subscribers. And that is a big jump from last month. It's actually 36% higher than it was last month. So everything's moving in the right direction. We're growing as a community. The comment section is alive and well. And thanks so much, by the way, for all the comments that you're making. I am trying my best to keep on track of them, to keep up to date with them, I should say. But it's getting a little bit harder, but I'm definitely doing my best. And I need to get better at it, honestly, because people that watch this channel, especially people that comment, you are the lifeblood of this whole channel. So I really appreciate you. My most popular video of the month last month was Misery, the book versus the movie, where, as it says, I compared the book and the movie of Misery and had a lot of fun doing that. Unfortunately, I didn't make many videos last month, and the reason for that was because I had a business trip to Colorado. I won't bore you with the business side of things, but I will tell you about something exciting that I did whilst I was in Colorado. And again, I kind of hinted at it at the beginning of the video. I went to something which is a bit of a dream location for me. Like people say, it's on their bucket list. And I think it would be a dream location for any Stephen King fan. I went to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park in Colorado, and that is also known as the inspiration for the overlook from The Shining. So if you've seen The Shining, or if you've read The Shining, probably with this audience, yeah, that was the inspiration. That's where Stephen King stayed and got inspired to write The Shining. Now, I actually had a misconception when I was going there. I thought that this is where they filmed The Shining as well. But actually, that's not exactly right. So first of all, it was the inspiration for The Shining. But for the Stanley Kubrick movie, I think a lot of that was filmed in Oregon. And Stephen King, I don't know if you know this bit of trivia, but Stephen King really hated the movie The Shining. He didn't feel like it was a good representation of the book. And so he actually approached, and this is one of the things that I learned while I was on the tour, he actually approached Stanley Kubrick after like slagging off the movie publicly for years. And he said, listen, I'm going to make my own version of The Shining for the screen. The funny thing was, though, he had to get the rights from Stanley Kubrick. And so Stanley Kubrick said, I will give you the rights to make the miniseries, right? I think it was a miniseries. I actually haven't seen it. I'll give you the rights, but under one condition, you've got to stop publicly trashing the film, basically. And so Stephen King said, all right, I won't trash the film anymore. And then he filmed his own version of The Shining. And that was filmed at the Stanley Hotel. And so I need to watch that. Apparently it's a truer depiction of the book. There's, I feel like Stanley Kubrick took a lot of liberties with the book. I love the Shining movie, by the way, and I really liked the book as well. I love the book as well. But there's some differences, right? And that's actually a video that I'm going to be making as well. The differences between the book and the movie of The Shining. I was so lucky because I was the only person that was on my tour. And so I just got to go around the whole hotel. I got to be outside the room 217 where Stephen King stayed, where he got inspired by the book. And then there was a story about Jim Carrey that had stayed at the hotel, and he stayed in room 217, as you would want to do, right? And he actually had to leave in the middle of the night. I think it was like 3 a.m. and he just said, no, I'm out. He's just ran out of there, never told anyone why. I'm a little bit of a skeptical person, I've got to be honest. In real life, I like horror books and I like horror movies, but sometimes I'm a little bit skeptical about ghosts and stuff like that. But I also love the feeling of being freaked out. And I definitely did sort of have that eerie feeling walking around these spooky rooms of the Stanley Hotel. It was fantastic, just a great tour, and I can't really recommend it highly enough. I do feel as though maybe I'll go back there one day and actually stay in the hotel. But with that said, take a guess how much room 217 in the Stanley Hotel is. And they've got a little plaque on it, by the way, that says Stephen King. Take a guess. How much do you think it is to stay in that room? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it. All right, I tell you, it's $700 a night to stay in that room. But you can, and this is a little cheat, you can stay in one of the satellite rooms, they're called, right? So they're kind of like the adjoining rooms. You can stay in one of those, and technically you would still be staying in the room where Stephen King was staying when he was inspired to write The Shining, and when he was kind of like freaked out by the hotel and everything. You would still be staying in that room because it all used to be one big room. Right. So yeah, maybe I will go there one day and stay in one of the rooms. The tour guide said that it was like really spooky at Christmas time, especially because no one is there. Basically, they don't really have that many guests. And he said you can walk around the lobby and they're playing Christmas carols and you're just there totally alone, almost as if you are Jack Torrance from the movie, you know? So yeah, really, really enjoyed it. One of the best things I've done. I think that's kind of like what I would call book tourism. It's one of the best book tourist locations I've ever been to. I loved it. Now, just finally, let's talk about what I've been recording myself. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm actually a voice actor. And so the project that I'm currently working on is a series that's written by an author called Alex Robbins. And the series is The War of the 12. I'm having a lot of fun recording these books. There's a broad range of characters, and I'm one of these narrators that really like to, you know, as much as I can, I'm not patting myself on the back or anything, but I like to differentiate the characters by giving them all unique voices. And I like to work with the author in order to do that, right? And so this book is an epic fantasy with lots of different characters, all from lots of different locations. So I get to have some fun with that. And it's set in a complete alternate fantasy universe where 400 years ago there were 12 great warriors that fought to protect the world from a kind of ancient evil, and they was able to beat it back underground. And then after they did that, they set up monasteries where they trained each of their knights in different unique ways. Basically, they've all got their own unique talents, all of these great warrior gods. And so anyway, 400 years later, or the demigods technically, but anyway, 400 years later, the same ancient evil has resurfaced, and now it's up to the knights who, in the absence of these warriors, that have to protect the world once again against this resurging ancient evil. And so, yeah, there's huge battle scenes. So every day I'm in there in my recording studio and I'm just sort of pretending to be knights and orc type creatures. The author, Alex Robbins, has actually done something very nice, I think, and he's provided me with some codes on Spotify where if you enter the code, you get the book for free. You just enter the code and it's like you've bought the book. I was thinking about doing a raffle, something like that, but honestly, if you've made it to this part in the video, then I think you deserve a code, and it's just going to have to be on a first come, first serve basis. So you can email me at that's Jay, paperbackjourneys@gmail.com, right? So you can email me there. I'll send you the code. And also, this is really important. I'm going to pin in the comment section the point at which all the codes are gone, right? So you don't waste your time emailing me. So yeah, just send me an email. It's just going to be the first 10 people that send me an email. I'll send it over to you in reply, and it is going to be first come, first serve. So, you know, if you don't get one, it's not that I don't value you as a subscriber or anything like that. It just means, you know, if anything else like this comes up in the future, you know, I'll try and let you know first if you miss out. So yeah, that was the month of April reading. I really enjoyed it. If you'd like to see what I'm going to be reading in May, then as always, I'm going to be spinning the roulette wheel and decide what I'm going to be reading for the month. And if you'd like to see that video, then you can click up here. All of the videos that I mentioned in this book, whether it was the books that I read or the books that I narrated, everything's going to be linked in the description box below. So if you want to check out those books, thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and happy reading.